Hello again, and welcome to a new session about designing the pipeline from the image. We reach the stage when we need to provide a container inside the repo machine that will run Artifactory and will be proxied by Nginx. So the first step will consist in polling the Artifactory Docker image. For this, I have already started the repo machine, and I have exposed the environment. And now this is the command for polling Artifactory OSS. Okay. Since this takes some time, I will speed up the video now. Okay, I resume the video now. The Artifactory OSS image was downloaded. We can see it. We can see the image here. Okay, before we run the Artifactory, we need the Nginx image also, because Nginx will proxy the Artifactory and will expose the Artifactory on port 80. In order to accomplish this, I will use a simple Docker file. You can do this in many ways. I will do it using this Docker file, which basically gets the Nginx latest image from Docker Hub and copy in Nginx these two files, Nginx conf and the Jenkins conf. This is just another way of accomplishing this copy step. For example, here you can copy from GitHub. It depends where you put these configuration files. So these files are configuration files specific to Nginx server. The important file is this one, and this is basically the most important part, where we can see that Nginx is set up as a proxy for HTTP Artifactory OSS and port 8081. This is basically the name that we will use to link the Nginx container with the Artifactory container. These two files are inspired by this article. You can read here more details about this file's content. Okay. So now I simply navigate to the folder where this Docker file is, and I will fire a build of the image. Okay, I will speed up the video now. I resume the video from here. The Nginx image was built. We can see it. We can see it here. So now I have both images for Nginx and for Artifactory. They are both available in the repo machine. What I will do next is to start the Artifactory container. For this, I will use a simple Docker run command. Important to notice here is the fact that we give this the Artifactory OSS name. Basically, this is the name that we have here. We use a volume just in case Artifactory will be stopped, and we need to restart it, and we don't want to lose the data. And this is the image. Another important aspect is the fact that we don't bind any port, so the 8081 port is not available outside the Docker host. Okay, so now let's fire up the container. It's done. We can easily check out the container. Okay, now I will try to access the 8081 port to be sure that is not visible. First, I need the IP of the repo machine. Okay, so this is the IP, and now I can try to open the 8081 port. As you can see, this site can't be reached. Okay, so Artifactory is running, but is not available in outside the Docker host. Now it's time to expose Artifactory outside the Docker host via Nginx. For this, all we have to do is to start Nginx. Again, we need a docker run command. This command, I will run the Nginx in background. It will expose, it will bind actually the 8080 port, and it will is linked to the Artifactory OSS container. Okay, Nginx is started. We can quickly check. So this is Nginx. It's up for 3 seconds while Artifactory runs for 7 minutes. Now we should be capable to access Artifactory via Nginx. So basically we come here, and all we have to do is to remove the port and rely on the default 80 port. Okay, so as you can see, Artifactory is available on port 80, so is basically proxied by Nginx, which can now be fine-tuned with multiple security layers and so on. Is about now is the job of an Nginx administrator, right? Okay, so now I will log in as the administrator in Artifactory. The user is admin and the password is password. Artifactory has a powerful security system, but this is not about Artifactory, right? So I will use the default settings, and what I will focus now is to create several repositories. I will create these 3 Maven repositories and this one, which is used by the developers. For this, I will go here and I will select new repository. I will select Maven, and here I should type the name of the repository. So the first repository is named snapshot repo. You can see it here. Of course, I've done this before. So this is the snapshot repo. I will let the default settings, and I will click save and finish. Now we can see here the snapshot repo of type Maven, and if we click on it, we can obtain more details. Okay. Now, following the same technique, I have created the staging repo and release repo. Now I will create the virtual repo. a virtual repository is basically a collection of local and remote repository. Basically, you can see it as a proxy, in this case for Maven repository. So if some dependencies are not available in Artifactory, they will be downloaded from the remote repository, and afterwards they will be available local. So now I will create a new virtual repository of type Maven. I will name it virtual repo, and these are the available repositories that we can select. So basically, via the virtual repository, the developers will be able to download dependencies from these repositories. Of course, you have to choose whatever repository you consider. I will save and finish. As you can see here, there is no remote repository. So I have a virtual repository with 3 local repositories. There is also I also need to create a remote repository, because of course not all the dependencies will be in those 3 local repositories. And I will create Maven. As you can see, there is also a default URL to JCenter repository, so I can use this, and all I have to do is to provide a name. I will say JCenter repo. I can fire up a test. It's successfully connected to the remote server, to the remote repository. I click save, and now I have a remote repository, a Maven remote repository. I will go back to virtual repo, and I will add the remote repository in the list. So now you have to know that this is basically the order that will be used. You can switch the repositories. Basically, when the dependencies are needed, Artifactory will scan from top to bottom in this order the available repositories under virtual repo. Okay, so I will save it. Now of course not everybody should access any repo. This is why Artifactory provides users, groups, and permissions. You can find the details about this in the Artifactory documentation, and this way you can have a very fine-tuned access to each repository. You can specify a user that belongs to a specific group, has specific permissions. For example, he can download from a repo, but he cannot upload in it, and so on. Okay, now we are using the basic configuration. Okay, my job here is done. Now I can log out. Okay, now that Artifactory server is available, we need to configure this in Jenkins. For this, I will go first. It is a good idea to install the Artifactory plugin. We will need it soon, so install the Artifactory plugin, and then we go to manage Jenkins, configure system. Now we have to scroll down until so here it is, the Artifactory section. We want to add our Artifactory server to Jenkins, so we click add. So we need to specify a server ID I will say Artifactory. It can be any other ID. We need the server URL, which is basically this one, and we will use the default deployer credentials. As you can see, you can use the other credentials also. Is the classical way to add credentials in Jenkins. You saw this before in the previous sessions, so you can do it this way or provide the defaults. And we also have used different resolver credentials, and we will test the connection. Okay, Jenkins found Artifactory 5.0.1, so it's capable to communicate with our Artifactory server. Now we can save. Now based on Artifactory plugin and on Jenkins pipeline syntax, we can write the following code. This code will publish the var of our application in the snapshot repo in Artifactory. For this, we need to define the Artifactory server based on the Artifactory ID that we have set it earlier. We need a Maven build environment, and we can invoke the clean and install phases, and we skip the tests, both the unit and the integration tests. Finally, we instruct the Artifactory to publish the build information. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so the build has started, and I will skip the video until Artifactory enters in the scene. Now the var is built. We can spot it here, and the var is deployed in Artifactory, as you can see here and here, and the deploying build information is available at this link, and the build was successfully deployed. We can browse it in Artifactory at this link. Okay, now let's open the build. Let's browse this in Artifactory. As you can see, we have here the build number and a bunch of informations about the build. We can now come here in the snapshot repository, and we can find our project, right? We can check the version 12918 is this one. Okay, and the application is available for download or other actions in the snapshot repo in Artifactory. Now these informations are also available directly from Jenkins. We just have to go here. As you can see, there is a link for each build. Of course, these builds are from my tests, and there is a link that if we click on it, it will open the Artifactory with the information specific to that build. Okay, and if we click here, we also have the Artifactory build info here. Basically, there is the same link. Okay, so we have successfully deployed our application in the snapshot repo in Artifactory. Okay, so that's it for this session. In the next session, we will focus on performance testing and we will take the code from Artifactory and we will promote the code to staging repo. Okay, see you soon.